What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal coming at you with the third fun-filled, fantastic voyage into real metal. I'm Rin.
Necrotic Nick.
I am Shredlord.
And we're going to review the Oscar award-winning film Mortal Kombat. The soundtrack.
Get over here!
And listen. And dance.
So, this soundtrack was released on August 15th, 1995, 3 days before the movie. Now, movie was, based off the hit arcade game. I definitely dumped a fuckload of quarters into that machine, Street Fighter 2, but that movie sucks, and I'm not even going to talk about that one. So, this was an interesting one that we kind of had on our radar because this was kind of like The Crow soundtrack in a way because it kind of merged a lot of different worlds, though I think on this one it merged two worlds that probably didn't get along as well, at least in my opinion. This was sort of a bridge soundtrack between electronic music and underground metal and industrial metal. And it's a very interesting listen, and the way they have it paced is it kind of has a dividing line. And, well, the dividing line pretty much starts for us towards the back half, namely around track 8, but we might as well talk about what the first half is. It's techno from the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's not that good. It's what I would refer to as shallow and pedantic.
Yeah, it's pretty much just your standard rave in a warehouse, drugged up, sweaty people, dancing, glow sticks, annoying. You know, a couple of bright spots. I mean, I like KMFDM, though I don't like the dance mix that's on here. It's Juke Joint Jezebel, which appeared on the album Nile, which is a good album. This is just the dance remix where they just repeat the chorus to the point you hate it. And, you know, it has the signature riff, but
It's not enough.
It wasn't enough.
It's not enough.
And this actually has a really early demo from Gravity Kills, which, again, this is one of those bands they kind of shoehorned in here because it was the bridge between the metal world and the techno glow stick world.
They guitars.
They guitars. And this was a song that came out before their self-titled album dropped, which was a pretty decent hit with Guilty. It was a pretty cool song back then. This was the demo for the song Goodbye, and I'm glad I heard the first album first, because I probably would not have got Gravity Kills based on the song, because it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
They had a guitarist, they had a keyboard, and
kind of filterish.
Yeah.
It's way too happy to be industrial.
Yeah.
It's way too hold my hand and tiptoe through the fucking tulips, man.
It just doesn't scream, as heavy as Guilty was, because when Guilty dropped, that became a pretty big hit.
Kind of, yeah.
My gripe with the whole first half of this album is it all could have been from the same artist.
Yeah.
I cannot really tell that most of this was a different artist. It all just sounded really generic. However, one of the songs that stood out in my mind for a comedy type reason is the song Halcyon and On by Orbital. To me, it has this mushroom acid trip vibe, being 9 minutes long. It takes you on a journey. If you're not in that realm, it might get a little stale. But in the beginning, it almost feels like Stuart Smalley is waiting to open the door and tell me that I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. And that made me giggle a little bit. And then it puts a beat to it, and I feel like I'm in a Billy Blanks Tybo commercial from 95, dude, watching Billy Blanks frickin' do Tybo with all them ladies in leotards in the 90s. I was morphed back to my childhood, if anything.
Beating
and that
the
made me giggle.
shit out of the air.
Oh, just pounding it into submission.
But he was not in this movie for some reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was a good martial artist, too.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Neither was Lorenzo Lamas.
Missed opportunity. But you know who was in this soundtrack? Tracy Lords.
Steubenville, Ohio's favorite pornographic daughter.
Apparently, I had forgot that Tracy Lords had another career in music. The other career was not music.
Well, she's been in movies where she was fully clothed.
Yeah. I've seen
And
a
old
couple
enough
of
to
them.
be
Not fully
clothed,
clothed.
but she was.
Yeah, she was.
But
at the
before
time.
that,
Yep. Nope. But I think most of the music is actually written by Juno Reactor, which is like a industrial world music. I don't know. It's an interesting project.
the movie about the pregnant teenager.
Yeah, no.
Another thing that struck me as slightly funny is the fact that there's 2 different versions of the same song on here, that being the actual Mortal Kombat theme. And the first version is done by the Utah Saints. No, thank you. The second version is done by the Immortals. Yes, please. The Immortals version is the one that 99.9% of you are all familiar with. That's the one we would have, liked to see on there if there was only one version of it. I don't understand why the need for 2.
2 different bands, groups. Can you call them bands? I don't want to call them bands. I don't know. The second one, the Immortals, that's the Test Your Might one. It's kind of fun.
It's way better.
The Utah Saints one, first off, I don't like the fact that they titled the song Utah Saints Take on the Theme from Mortal Kombat. It is just brimming with creativity. Yeah. There's no need for both of them. They're essentially both covering pretty much the same thing. So one of them goes and it's Utah Saints. Now the back half, or pretty much the side stage, as I would say it on this, because most of this album I felt like I was at a rave and kind of miserable, just talking to sweaty people going, oh, can I lick your skin? Like, no, go away. You finally get to the metal, and it kicks off with Geezer, or GZR, either or. It's Geezer Butler, and he had a side project in the 90s, and it actually features Burton Bell on vocals, and this actually kind of kicks off the metal stuff very appropriately. It's just a straight up groove metal song. Big, gnarly guitar tone.
Real guitar tone.
Yeah.
Real.
And a big bass.
Yeah.
Wonder why. But yeah, the song's okay, but at least at this point it was kind of a refresher. Like, okay, now we're getting the stuff that this channel can actually really talk about.
Obsolete.
As much as I love Geezer Butler, this song was okay. The chorus I could have absolutely done without, the melody-wise. I thought it was kind of bad. I've never been the biggest Burton fan vocally.
Yeah, the lyrics on the song are a little goofy because I think Burton works better in a more industrial environment, such as
Fear Factory. Now, this was a good launching point because I believe like maybe a month earlier, Demanufacture it dropped for Fear Factory, and they get them on this nice soundtrack with the song Zero Signal, which absolutely whoops ass, and it's in a killer scene in the movie. It's the whole fight between Johnny Cage and Scorpion. It's actually pretty damn cool. And I think this and the big standout heavy as balls track that I knew, Napalm Death's Twist the Knife Slowly, that was probably where I learned who Napalm Death was. Now, I eventually probably would have anyway, but this stands out as the heaviest track on here, and the fact that this is such a hard turn in this soundtrack. It goes from extremely not something I'm really into to something that really got me into a lot of extreme stuff later on.
this is Napalm Death selling out like the big commercial successes they are. Grammys and talk shows and breakfast cereals and condoms and caskets.
Get your Barney Oats.
You sellouts.
It is interesting, though, that I think Fear, Emptiness, Despair, where Twist the Knife slowly came off of, I believe is their highest selling album to date. So, I mean, for a soundtrack, you know, doing what a soundtrack does, promote underground bands and kind of throw in different stuff in there, that actually did really well for probably both Fear Factory and Napalm Death. So, respect there.
It also did really well for another band that made its way onto this soundtrack. That's one of my favorite bands.
Steubenville, Ohio.
No. New York's own Typo Negative. Blood and Fire. The Out of the Ashes mix, which evidently Pete kindly referred to it as the Sellout mix, as it was basically chopped up to a more compressed version of the song. Also, the guitars were remixed to add a little bit of more crunchiness to sound a little bit more like the other guitars on the album, that more industrial sound. And then I believe Pete did a different vocal take.
Sounds like it.
It sounds like it. I think so.
Filtered them?
If anyone knows, that'd be awesome. Leave it in the comments for sure. But
Pete's not talking.
Pete's voice immediately made my knees weak and my nipples hard. And clearly, this is one of my favorite songs on the album, as well as one of my favorite guitar players who makes his way on one of the last tracks with George Clinton. Goro vs. Art, that is, of course, Buckethead and Long Live the Bucket. George Clinton is like controlling the bucket, making him stay in certain parameters. It wasn't his normal... Although he was riffing his ass off,
he was.
It was still very kind of thematic, and even the solo was a little more restrained and focused on like creepy melody and stuff. It was really, really cool. That's a really cool track.
Very less weird than Buckethead's usual fare.
Yes, I feel like it was a restrained Bucket.
No puppets or nunchucks.
Too much restraint can be a bad thing, though. Like the track Mother's Day Out.
Well,
What You See by Mother's Day Out, it wasn't bad, but let me explain. It is the non-alcoholic version of Biohazard. If Biohazard NA was a thing, it would be Mother's Day Out.
I mean, it did sound like the guy that raps in 311 fronted Biohazard. That one has an interesting story, and I was just looking it up, that apparently this band had got signed, put out one album, and broken up the year before the soundtrack came out, but they were contacted while on the road, probably in the process of breaking up, to actually get this song on there. So they got like a tremendous amount of exposure, but the band was already defunct by the time this came out. And it's pretty much what you'd expect out of 90s alternative metal. It's kind of proto new metal, rap rock.
kind of hardcore, kind of helmet, kind of new metal.
Very Biohazard?
Not really. I like Biohazard.
There are
No.
I don't like this that much.
Yeah, because it's the watered down version.
It does. It feels like
That's why.
Diet Hazard.
Diet Hazard.
Non-alcoholic. I'm taking it a step further. That's how watered down it is.
I could use some calories. Now, this is pretty interesting in terms of like some of the underground bands they throw in here, namely Bile and Sister Machine Gun, kind of the like budding industrial scene that was out there. Sister Machine Gun's kind of an odd one. It's kind of like lounge music and Nine Inch Nails. But Bile definitely sounds like old school gritty industrial metal, and they may or may not have had a similar drum loop there and kind of structured some Nine Inch Nails songs. But it was a good song. It was nice and heavy, and it was a good break from everything else electronic on here that wasn't. Now, another interesting thing is I think there had to be some soundtrack changes just because there are some songs featured in the movie that aren't on the soundtrack. There were 3 songs by Stabbing Westward in the movie, all 3 from the album On God, but they don't appear on the soundtrack. And I think that is probably because this came out on TVT Records and they wanted to promote TVT bands. So Gravity Kills, KMFDM, which is on Wax Tracks, and I believe Geezer, Sister Machine Gun, they were all TVT bands, so they had to get on that soundtrack. And yeah, I could have stood with some Stabbing Westward songs in there. Yeah. But overall, this is an interesting soundtrack. I don't think it gels as well as, like, say, The Crow, where all the songs kind of fit a similar mood.
Right.
This is just kind of, here's the A side, here's the B side. The battle line might be drawn. You know, this party is just a war for the aux in terms of who's controlling the playlist, and it's so different. But I like a lot of the more metal stuff, and some of the techno stuff I don't mind as much, but it hasn't aged well. So overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. It's a good soundtrack, and I mean, if you like some cool like 90s nods in terms of where we were in metal around the mid 90s, this has got a pretty good focus on like a pretty nice little subset of it. The techno stuff, you know, if you like it, then you like it. I'm not the biggest fan of some of it, and you know, even the stuff that I did like you know, KMFDM, I don't like that remix. Just give me the regular shit. But yeah, it's a fun soundtrack. Check it out.
I'm also going to go 3. The 3 biggest metal songs on here I love. Get Your Fear Factory, Get Your Typo, Get Your Napalm Death. Absolutely. And if you want to come on over here and dance with me, you pleather-clad goth mama, we'll listen to the first 7 songs.
Yeah, I think I agree with you both. I believe I even said 3 first. Not that I'm a trendsetter or anything,
Right.
but starting off the first half of this album, it was down here. It was down here, and then, you know, then we get some metal, we get some Fear Factory, we get some Napalm Death, we get some Buckethead, we get some Typo, boom.
Yep.
We're right back in the middle. So we're right where we started 3. Half of this record, I could never listen to the rest of my life and be happy. The other half, I would gladly listen to. So that's why we're going to be right at the middle. 3 it is.
And this is interesting because, I mean, I thought about looking into the Mortal Kombat Annihilation soundtrack. The movie is absolute trash, by the way. If you've never seen it, don't. but unfortunately, it took kind of more of a turn towards mostly techno. Like, so most of the rock elements were kind of gone. They did do a sequel essentially to this soundtrack, simply called More Combat, and it actually does feature some cool stuff, so we might actually cover that one. But yeah, as far as like, you know, Annihilation, just know it's terrible. Soundtrack has a couple of decent songs, and we're done talking about it.
All right. So, if you like what you saw here, please hit the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, because if you have not subscribed already, you will be notified when we do awesome shit, which we pretty much do all the time. Also, we are now on Patreon. There is a link below. If you would like to support a couple jackasses who love to sit around and circle jerk and talk about metal, we would appreciate your love and support as well. Also, we have shirts now available. We would love to see every single last one of you in a Thralls of Metal shirt. And if you'd like to make that happen, please go ahead and send us an email, which will be posted down below, with shirt in the title, and then your email address, obviously, which we will have to send you the invoice, and we can get you out your beautiful Sons of Midwestern Darkness Thralls of Metal t-shirt. So, on behalf of my shithead cohorts and I, we wish you adieu, and we will come back with yet another real metal soundtrack review.